All right, and with that...
There's a couple faces in the crowd.
Yeah, we're going to get to know those faces. Yeah,
Colorado.
Which is why we're bringing on the voice of the Colorado Buffaloes, one time the voice of the Syracuse Orange, our good friend Mark Johnson, joining us here on the show. Always great to chat with you, Mark. How are you?
Polly, Steve, good to be on with you. And I'm happy to be joining you on a Tom Petty day, man. That's a strong intro on any show.
Glad you like our artist of the day. Let's jump in. I guess we'll go with the newest commit, and that is Savon Washington, who is a very big boy, right? 6'8", 320 is what I read. What can you tell us about Mr. Washington?
Well, yeah. How about that pipeline that's started between Colorado and Syracuse, man? That's unbelievable, yeah. Big, strong, agile athlete. Was a part of an offensive line a year ago that was not very good. All right, so let's be honest about it. But that doesn't mean the individual parts weren't pretty solid. I mean, they had their issues last season in mass as a group, but I think there were some guys that stood out at different times. Savon, I always thought was a pretty impressive player and could have been a nice part of what they were doing. But as we've kind of found out with Coach Prime, he does a lot of cleaning out and bringing in new. And so there was a lot of cleaning that's been done here and continues to be done on this roster. And so a lot of these guys are looking for new homes. But I always thought Savon was a very capable player at a Power 5 level.
You know, Mark, you say that with Coach Prime, but is it something Syracuse fans should be worried about, that this is his third school?
Well, if you would have asked me that 5 years ago, I'd have said absolutely. But today, this is commonplace. I mean, one of the games I was doing in basketball here a few months ago, there was a guy in his fifth school. I mean, it's part and parcel of what college athletics is now. So when that used to be a red flag, now it just seems to be kind of commonplace for these guys to jump around. Listen, I don't understand it. I was doing a speaking event the other day, and somebody was asking me about kind of transfer portal and NIL and all that kind of thing, and I said, listen, I've gotten to the point where I love the games. I'm just not a big fan of the sport anymore because of what it's become and this kind of twisted, perverted model that we have right now. That's not sustainable. But I guess I wouldn't be terribly concerned about it at this point, considering especially what's been going on here in Colorado and how this has been commonplace now with Prime the last couple of years.
You touch on the state of college athletics, and I'm sure you saw the news, about a week ago, that the state of Virginia is going to allow colleges in Virginia to really handle the NIL, that it doesn't necessarily have to come from the outside. The schools can be involved with that. I would assume more states are going to follow. Do you think that's a good thing, to put NIL completely in the hands of the schools, or will it just create more problems?
No, I don't. I don't think this model's sustainable. I just saw, in fact, a friend of mine that had been in Oklahoma a long time and retired a couple of years ago just sent me a little note that Texas A&M is laying off staff members now so they can continue paying NIL for student athletes, because that's where it's going. And so this is not sustainable right now. What we've got is a system where the student athlete at this point has all the freedom, none of the responsibility, gets the money, can leave anytime they want, as many times as they want. And one of the false flags that always gets thrown, every time I'm on a show and we get talking about this, somebody will tweet at me or something and go, well, coaches do this. Yes, but they have a penalty when they leave, right? Right now, student athletes can just jump around wherever they want, willy-nilly. At any point, they can leave. There's no free agency period, if I could borrow that term from the NFL. They can leave at any point, at any juncture, at any point in the calendar, and there is no responsibility in there. And you can't do business this way, which is why this is not going to last very long. And there's going to be, I think, an enormous earthquake coming in college athletics. You know,
Mark, I always bring up the fact that I don't know how sustainable it is for like a car dealership or a restaurant in town to keep doing this. After the first year of primetime, did it sour anybody that was NIL that said, hey, you know what, I can't afford to do this every year if it's not going to bring the wins?
It's happening like crazy. I hear from boosters all the time, because what's happening is, listen, I had a booster the other day say to me, I've been asked to give some money to support a student athlete that's making more money than I'm making. Now, think about that for a second, all right? We got a couple of guys in the CU program who make enormous money right now. And so there's got to be a return on investment. Listen, businessmen and women are very smart people. You can't just keep throwing money away. At some point, this dries up. We're starting to see this shift now from kind of the individual donor to more corporate donors out there. And I'm not even sure how long that's going to last. I mean, ultimately, we know where this is going, guys. This is going to break up, and they're going to have unionization and revenue sharing, and they're going to become employees and and all the different things. I mean, within athletic departments around the country, they're talking about, like Florida State has already, they've incorporated their athletic department. They're talking about equity firms buying athletic departments. So this is all going in that direction, which is why I say this model cannot continue as it stands right now because it's just not sustainable.
All right, one more football question before we get on to Eddie Lampkin. I don't know how much you still keep track of Syracuse or follow Syracuse from afar, but have you noticed what's going on here? Fran Brown comes here from Georgia, and they have upgraded their talent. They're in on 4- and 5-star recruits, and his recruiting efforts have been out of this world, and to the point where folks around here are saying, do they win 8, 9, 10 games next year because they don't play Clemson, Florida State, and North Carolina? What have you noticed from afar, Mark? And I guess what has raised your eyebrows about the Syracuse football program?
Well, just the fact that they're making that kind of noise. I mean, I always say it's been 20 years since I was there, but I still always keep a distant eye on what's going on with the program, and that's exciting because we know there's been great history with that program. It tailed off certainly when I was there. It was rather average, and then had some bad times after I left, and so there's been some recent years where we've had some pretty good football teams, but just the fact they're making that kind of noise. But guys, I have a tough time evaluating programs at this point with what's going on with the portal and with the NIL we were just talking about. It's hard to get an assessment of anything. And what we do right now in terms of generating excitement and who we're getting, visits from, I'm not sure if it has the same credibility that it used to have. And so I have a tough time really evaluating things. I'm hopeful. I love seeing Syracuse do well, but it's just tough to really get a real good beat on it, I think.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. All right, let's move on to basketball now. And Eddie Lampkin, Syracuse has been in desperate need of a center really for several years. And I think that the feeling and the hope around here, Mark, is that this is the guy that they've needed all along. Can you tell us about Eddie Lampkin and, kind of what he brings to the table and what he will bring to the table for Syracuse?
Well, first off, Cuse fans are going to love Eddie Lampkin. He's that kind of guy. When he came here to Colorado from TCU, I called my buddy Brian Estridge down there, and he said the exact same thing, and I'll tell you the same thing he's told me because it's true. They're going to fall in love with him. He's a fan favorite kind of guy. He's got that look. He's got an energy about him. I used to joke in the air all the time, Eddie is talking nonstop, and I always used to tell Eddie, I want to mic you up during a game because I want to know what you're talking about, because he's not necessarily talking to anybody specifically. He's just conversing all the time. Half the time I think it's just a conversation with himself. He's an energy guy. He is a very good passing big man. He'll make some interesting reads at times. He's got great vision on the court, so he passes a lot of. If your offense is going to go inside out, he'll be able to pass the ball. He averages, about 2.5 assists, I think, for a big man, which is a big number for him. He can be very physical and dynamic at times. He's not the kind of guy that's going to step out and shoot the ball from 15 feet. That's not his game. Everything's going to be within about 3 or 4 feet of the hoop, and so he overpowers guys. He's just a fun player. We enjoyed having him here, and I was kind of disappointed he didn't come back one more year.
Mark, he doesn't seem to have a lot of block shots. How is he defensively?
He's a good position guy, Paulie. But you're right. He's not a high-flying guy. He's not the kind of guy that's going to go up and give you a lot of dunks, that kind of thing, or block a lot of shots. But he's a position guy. He plays the pick and roll very well. So he's got a good basketball IQ, and he moves his feet very well. There were times in Tad Boyle's system at Colorado, they'll switch 1 through 5 on a regular basis, depending on who they're playing. And Eddie would get switched off on a guard, and he's capable of moving his feet well enough. And so he's got very good footwork. But, yeah, not a high-flying guy that's going to go up and swat a lot of shots.
Gone are the days, Mark, of players sticking around 4 years, and you can rely on your seniors that have been there for several years to be your leaders. Eddie Lampkin's obviously been around the block. He's a fifth-year guy. Do you envision him? Is he the kind of kid that could come in here, the kind of young man who could come in here and be a leader for this team, even though, it's his first year at Syracuse?
I think so, but he'll do it more from on the court standpoint. I don't know that he's a big, talker in terms of leadership in the locker room. I'm not sure that's really his personality. He's like you said, he's a evasive personality, and so there's a lot of energy there. So I think most of his leadership probably comes from kind of how he conducts himself on the court. Teammates seem to love him. I didn't ever hear anything that he wasn't loved by his teammates here at the University of Colorado. But there's not a lot of downside to Eddie. Like I said, you'll enjoy him. When when you interview him, you get some interesting responses, and he's kind of a fun guy. And so I think you guys will like him overall at Syracuse.
All right, before we let you go, how are things going in Colorado? And is there still a love affair between the fans and Coach Prime, or has that wavered at all the way the last season ended?
No, I think it's still there, and they're doubling down on it now because last year there was a pretty good improvement from 1 win the year before he got here to 4 last year. Now he keeps talking about college football playoffs with the expansion, and of course Colorado's moving into the Big 12 now, which I think is a solid conference. I'm not sure there's a great team in the Big 12 coming up this season, so the expectations are high. The transfer portal has been humming. I mean, that's the way he develops his team. The recruiting class from a high school standpoint was very small. It was about 6-7 guys. And so the bulk of what he's done has been through the transfer portal. So we're all trying. We got the spring game coming up on Saturday, and I'll be honest with you. I'm going to need a roster because I don't know about 80% of the guys in the roster again this year.
All right. It's the way things are now in college athletics, right? We all got to get used to it. Mark, thanks so much for the time. Great insight as always. Be well, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Always good to talk to you guys. Take care.
All right, Mark Johnson, the voice of the Colorado Buffaloes.
The golden voice. Of
Yes,
Mark
love
Johnson.
his voice. Great voice. All right, so we've got Dave McMenamin coming up. He's going to be at 12:45. Robert Wilson, 1 o'clock, and then Wildcat Wednesday at 1:30.
So at 12:30, we could talk a little SU basketball. We'll sneak in the worst song bracket, and I've got win them before you can buy them tickets to a concert.
I love it. Sweeping the nation.
Yes, yeah, we're not even going to sweep.
All right, just have him call.
So it'll be, what did you call it? I said win it before you...
Win them before you can get them.
Win them before you can get them, yes, that's right. This concert's tickets will go on sale Friday.
There you go.
We've got them today.
Win them before you can get them. All right. We will be back after this. Again, Dave McMenamin coming up in about 15 minutes.
We could ask Dave about Syracuse basketball, too. He was a manager.